My name is Gina, and this is the story of how my life fell apart and then came back together. I'm 35 years old, and until recently, I thought I had it all figured out. I was the sales director at a large company, married to my college sweetheart, Mark, and we had just bought our first house. After graduation, I landed an entry-level job at a promising startup. I worked my way up the ladder, putting in long hours and sacrificing weekends. It paid off when I was promoted to sales director last year. Mark, on the other hand, had a harder time finding his footing. He bounced between a few jobs before settling as a shift supervisor at a mirror manufacturing company. Our best friends were another couple, Lisa and Tom. We met them at a neighborhood barbecue shortly after moving into our new house. Lisa was a stay-at-home wife, always impeccably dressed and with a spotless home. Tom was a successful entrepreneur who seemed to work as much as I did. When we bought our house, I was the one who qualified for the mortgage. I put it in my name and assumed all the responsibility for the payments. I didn't mind at the time, I was making good money, and I figured Mark would contribute when he could. As time went on, I noticed Mark becoming more and more dissatisfied with his job. He'd come home complaining about his boss, saying things like, "He's always on my case about everything. I can't do anything right," in his eyes. I tried to be supportive. "What happened this time?" I'd ask, setting aside whatever work I'd brought home. "He called me out for being 5 minutes late," Mark would huff. "As if that makes a difference. And then he had the nerve to tell me how to talk to the clients. I'd been doing this job for years." I'd listen and nod, but inside I was growing frustrated. These seemed like normal workplace interactions to me, not the personal attacks Mark made them out to be. One day, Mark came home earlier than usual. I was in the middle of a conference call, but excused myself when I saw his face. "What's wrong?" I asked, muting my laptop. "I quit," he said simply. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "You what?" I couldn't take it anymore. My boss made another comment about my attitude, and I just snapped. I told him where he could shove his job and walked out. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the panic rising in my chest. "Mark, we have a mortgage. We can't afford for you to be unemployed right now." He waved off my concern. "I'll find something better. Something where I'm appreciated." I wanted to scream. Instead, I just nodded and went back to my call. After Mark quit his job, our lives changed dramatically. I took on extra shifts and increased my workload, desperate to keep up with our mortgage payments and daily expenses. My days became a blur of meetings, sales calls, and late nights at the office. I was exhausted, but I didn't see any other choice. Meanwhile, Mark seemed to be in no hurry to find new employment. He'd occasionally mention an interview he'd been to, but there was always some reason it wasn't the right fit. The commute would be a nightmare, he'd say, or, the boss seemed like a real jerk. I tried to be patient, but my frustration grew with each passing day. One evening, I came home late to find Mark lounging on the couch, watching TV. "Hey," I said, dropping my bag by the door. "Have you eaten?" He looked up at me, frowning. "No, I was waiting for you to cook something." I stared at him in disbelief. "Mark, it's 9 p.m. I've been working since 7 this morning. Why didn't you make dinner?" "Because that's your job," he snapped. "You're never home anymore, Gina. The house is a mess, there's no food in the fridge, and I can't remember the last time we had a proper meal together." I felt my temper rising. "My job? My job is keeping a roof over our heads and food on the table." "What exactly is your job right now, Mark?" "I'm looking for work," he shouted. "Do you think I enjoy sitting around all day? But I'm not going to settle for just any job. I deserve better than that." I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "I understand that, but we can't afford for you to be so picky right now. We have bills to pay." "Always about the money with you," he muttered. "What happened to supporting each other through thick and thin?" "I am supporting us," I said quietly. "But I need you to meet me halfway." Please, just try harder to find something. Anything. We can reassess once we're more stable. Mark didn't respond. He just turned back to the TV, effectively ending the conversation. I went to bed hungry and angry that night, wondering how much longer I could keep this up. The next day, I met Lisa for coffee during my lunch break. She looked fresh and relaxed, her hair perfectly styled and her nails freshly manicured. "Gina, honey, you look exhausted," she said, concern in her voice. "Are you getting any sleep at all?" I sighed, sipping my double espresso. "Not much. Work's been crazy, and things at home are tense." Lisa reached out and patted my hand. "You're working too hard. You need to take care of yourself, relax a little. Tom always says a happy wife makes for a happy life." I bit back a retort. Lisa meant well, but she had no idea what my life was like. "It's not that simple for us right now," I said instead. "But I'm sure things will get better soon." As the weeks went by, the tension in our house grew thicker. Mark's job search seemed to be going nowhere, and I was stretching myself thin, trying to keep everything afloat. Our conversations, when we had them, were short and often ended in arguments. One evening, I came home to find Mark dressed up, ready to go out. "Where are you going?" I asked, surprised. "Out with the guys," he replied, not meeting my eyes. "We're going to play golf." "Golf? At this hour?" I was skeptical, but too tired to argue. "Whatever. Have fun." As he left, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. But I pushed it aside, focusing instead on the mountain of work I'd brought home. The next day, I decided I needed a break. I took a rare day off from work and planned to surprise Mark with a weekend getaway. When I called to tell him, he seemed distracted. "This weekend? I can't. I've got plans with the guys again." I felt my heart sink. "Again? Can't you reschedule?" "No, it's important. Sorry, babe." He hung up before I could respond. Frustrated and hurt, I called Lisa. Maybe she and Tom would want to do something. "Oh, Gina," Lisa's voice was apologetic. "We'd love to, but Tom and I are visiting my parents this weekend." "Rain check?" I agreed, trying not to sound as disappointed as I felt. It seemed like everyone had plans except me. On a whim, I decided to go shopping. Maybe a little retail therapy would lift my spirits. As I was browsing through a department store, I heard a familiar voice. "Gina, what are you doing here?" I turned to see Tom, Lisa's husband, looking surprised and slightly uncomfortable. "Tom, I thought you and Lisa were visiting her parents this weekend?" His brow furrowed in confusion. "Her parents? No, we didn't have any plans. Lisa said she was spending the night at your place." My blood ran cold. "What? No, she's not with me. She told me you two were out of town." We found a quiet cafe and sat down. Tom looked grim as he spoke. "I've had suspicions for a while now," he said. "Lisa's been acting strange, always on her phone, making excuses to go out. I think our spouses might be having an affair." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I couldn't breathe. "No," I whispered. "They wouldn't." But even as I said it, pieces started falling into place. Mark's mysterious outings, Lisa's constant presence in our home, the way they looked at each other. Tom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm going to hire a private investigator. We need to know for sure. And we don't let on that we suspect anything. Can you do that, Gina?" I took a deep breath and straightened my shoulders. Yes, I can." As I drove home that evening, my mind was reeling. How had I not seen this coming? I walked into our house, half expecting to catch Mark and Lisa in the act. But the house was empty and quiet. Mark came home late, smelling of alcohol and mumbling about a great game of golf. The next 2 weeks were excruciating. I went through the motions of daily life, pretending everything was normal, while my insides churned with suspicion and dread. Mark continued his golf outings and job hunting charade, and I feigned belief in his increasingly transparent lies. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Tom. "We need to talk. Meet me at the cafe in an hour." My heart raced as I made an excuse to leave work early. When I arrived at the cafe, Tom was already there, a thick manila envelope on the table in front of him. He slid the envelope across to me without further ado. With trembling hands, I opened it and began to look through the contents. There were photographs, credit card statements, hotel receipts, and transcripts of text messages. It was all there in black and white, irrefutable evidence of Mark and Lisa's betrayal. "How long?" I managed to choke out. Tom's voice was flat. "At least 6 months, according to the investigator. Maybe longer." I felt like I might be sick. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of me working myself to the bone while Mark. "There's more," Tom said quietly. "Gina, you need to check your bank accounts. All of them." Confused, I pulled out my phone and logged into my banking app. What I saw made my blood run cold. My savings account, the one I'd been quietly building up for years as an emergency fund, was empty. With shaking fingers, I checked my credit card balance, which I had given Mark to pay for gasoline. Maxed out. "He's been funding their little adventure with your money," Tom said, his voice tight with anger. "Fancy dinners, hotel rooms, gifts for Lisa. All on your dime." The shock gave way to a fury I'd never experienced before. All those times I'd come home exhausted, all the extra hours I'd put in, all the sacrifices I'd made, and this is how Mark repaid me? "What are you going to do?" I asked Tom, my voice surprisingly steady. He leaned back, a cold smile on his face. "I'm going to divorce Lisa and take her for everything she's worth. And then some." He paused, looking at me intently. "The question is, what are you going to do, Gina?" I took a deep breath, my mind racing. "I want revenge," I said slowly. "But I want them to suffer. I want them to feel as humiliated and betrayed as I do right now." Tom nodded approvingly. "I was hoping you'd say that. I have an idea, but it's going to take some planning." Over the next hour, Tom and I hatched a plan. It was devious, it was cruel, and it was exactly what Mark and Lisa deserved. That night, when Mark came home, I greeted him with a smile. "Hey, honey," I said, kissing his cheek. "Listen, I was thinking, why don't we throw a party next weekend? To celebrate our friendship with Tom and Lisa. It's been a while since we all got together." Mark's eyes lit up. "Yeah, that sounds fun. I'm sure Lisa would love to help plan it." As I turned away, ostensibly to start dinner, I allowed myself a small, grim smile. Mark and Lisa had no idea that their perfect little world was about to come crashing down around them. The week leading up to the party was a masterclass in deception. I threw myself into the preparations with a manic energy, playing the role of the perfect hostess. I called Lisa daily, discussing menu plans and decorations, all while picturing the look on her face when her world fell apart. The day of the party arrived, and our house was transformed. I had outdone myself with the decorations and food, determined that everything should be perfect for the grand finale. Guests started arriving in the early evening. I played the gracious host, making small talk and ensuring everyone's glasses were full. Tom arrived alone, explaining that Lisa would be there shortly. She was picking up a special dessert. When Lisa finally swept in, she was the picture of domestic perfection. Her hair was immaculate, her dress flattering, and in her arms was an elaborate cake. "Sorry I'm late," she trilled, air-kissing my cheek. I wanted everything to be just right. As the evening progressed, I watched Mark and Lisa carefully. To the casual observer, there was nothing untoward in their interactions. But now that I knew what to look for, their stolen glances and subtle touches were glaringly obvious. Finally, as the sky outside darkened, Tom stood up and clinked his glass for attention. "Everyone, if I could have your attention please," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "Gina and I have prepared a little entertainment for you all." If you'd like to gather outside, we've set up a screen for an interesting film. There was a murmur of excitement as our guests filed out onto the back lawn. Mark looked at me, confused. "What's this about?" he asked. I smiled sweetly. "Oh, just a little trip down memory lane. Come on, you don't want to miss this." Outside, everyone settled onto blankets and chairs, facing the large screen we'd set up. Tom started the projector, and at first, it showed innocent scenes, the four of us on various outings, laughing and having fun. I saw Lisa relax, probably thinking this was just a sentimental slideshow. How wrong she was. Suddenly, the music changed, becoming darker, more ominous. The images on the screen shifted, showing Mark and Lisa in various compromising positions, leaving hotels together, kissing in a car, entering our house when I was at work. A collective gasp went up from the audience. I heard Lisa's mother let out a strangled cry. Mark jumped to his feet. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. I stood up slowly, my voice ice cold as I addressed the stunned crowd. "This, ladies and gentlemen, is what betrayal looks like." While Tom and I worked ourselves to the bone, our spouses were carrying on an affair behind our backs. Lisa was sobbing now, mascara running down her face. "Gina, please, I can explain." "Explain?" I cut her off. "Explain how you've been sleeping with my husband for months. Explain how you've been spending my hard-earned money on your little trysts." Tom stepped forward, his face grim. "Lisa, don't bother coming home. I've already changed the locks. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." The party dissolved into chaos. Guests were whispering furiously among themselves. Lisa's parents were berating her, her father's face purple with rage. As the shocked murmurs of the guests subsided, I steeled myself for what I knew I had to do next. I walked back into the house, retrieved the manila envelope from my desk drawer, and returned to the lawn. Mark was still standing there, looking shell-shocked and pale. I thrust the envelope into his hands. "Here are the divorce papers, Mark. I want you out of my house tonight, and I'll be demanding compensation from both you and Lisa for your betrayal." Mark fumbled with the envelope, his hands shaking. "Gina, please, we can talk about this. I can explain." "There's nothing to explain," I cut him off coldly. "You've said enough with your actions. Now leave." He stood there, divorce papers in hand, looking as if he'd been slapped. Guests were approaching me, offering sympathetic words and support. In the middle of the lawn, Lisa had sunk to her knees, mascara running down her face as she pleaded with Tom. "Please, Tom, don't divorce me. I made a mistake. We can work through this." To my surprise, Mark rushed over to Lisa. He grabbed her arm and hissed, "Get up. Don't humiliate yourself like this. We can start over, make a new life together." Lisa's tear-streaked face contorted with fury. She yanked her arm away from Mark and spat. "Start over? With you? I don't need an unemployed man who can only pay compliments. I need someone who can actually support me." As the last of the guests trickled out, offering final words of support, Tom approached me. His face was a mask of controlled anger, but his voice was gentle when he spoke to me. "Gina, if you need any help, legal, financial, anything, please don't hesitate to call me. We're in this together, okay?" I nodded, grateful for his support. "Thank you, Tom. The same goes for you." As Tom left, I turned to Mark, who was standing alone, looking lost. "I want you gone by morning. Leave your keys on the kitchen counter." I turned my back on him and walked into the house, closing the door firmly behind me. Through the window, I watched as he slowly made his way down the driveway and out of sight. The house felt eerily quiet after the chaos of the evening. I sank onto the couch, emotionally and physically exhausted. Tears threatened to spill, but I held them back. I was sad, yes, mourning the death of my marriage and what I thought was a close friendship. But underlying that sadness was a sense of calm, even relief. For months, I had been carrying the weight of an unemployed, dissatisfied husband. I had worked myself to the bone, trying to keep our life afloat while he contributed nothing but complaints. Now, that burden was lifted. Yes, the road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, I felt free. In the weeks following the explosive revelation at the party, life took on a new rhythm. I threw myself into work, finding solace in the familiar routine of sales reports and client meetings. But unlike before, I made sure to maintain a healthier balance, reducing my overtime and actually using my vacation days. One afternoon, as I was leaving the office, I ran into Tom. He looked tired but determined. "Gina," he greeted me with a nod. "How are you holding up?" I managed a small smile. "I'm doing okay. How about you? Any news?" Tom's face hardened. "The divorce is final. I kicked Lisa out of the house last week." I wasn't surprised, but I still felt a twinge of something. Not quite sympathy, but a sense of shared experience. "How did she take it?" He shrugged. "Not well. Apparently, her parents meant what they said at the party. They refused to take her in or help her financially." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? That seems harsh." "They're old-fashioned. Adultery is a big deal to them." Tom sighed. "Last I heard, she's working as a sales clerk at some department store downtown." The irony wasn't lost on me. Lisa, who had always looked down on my career, was now forced to work a job she would have considered beneath her. "What goes around comes around, I suppose," I murmured. Tom nodded grimly. "How are things with Mark?" I rolled my eyes. "He won't stop calling and texting. Keeps begging for another chance. But I feel nothing. The love, the trust, it's all gone. I can't imagine ever wanting to be with him again." We parted ways, and as I drove home, I reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. The next day, I met with my lawyer to discuss the progress of my own divorce proceedings. She greeted me with a triumphant smile. "Good news, Gina. The judge has reviewed the evidence, including the detective's report, and has ruled in our favor on all counts." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means," my lawyer said, "that Mark has been ordered to pay you substantial compensation for his infidelity. Moreover, he's required to repay every cent he took from your reserve account and credit card for his affair with Lisa." As I left the lawyer's office, I felt lighter than I had in years. With the compensation and repayment from Mark, I was able to pay off the remainder of my mortgage in one fell swoop. The house was now truly, fully mine. That evening, as I was celebrating my newfound financial freedom with a glass of wine, my phone buzzed. It was Mark, again. "Gina, please," his message read. "I know I messed up. But I love you. Can't we try to work things out? I'll do anything." I stared at the message for a long moment. Once, those words might have moved me. Now, they just left me cold. I typed out a response. "Mark, stop contacting me. It's over. I don't love you anymore, and I don't want to try again. Please respect my decision and leave me alone." I hit send and then blocked his number. It felt final, decisive. And it felt good. Life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. Just when I thought I had everything figured out, that I was content with my newfound independence, fate threw me another curveball. It started innocently enough. Tom and I had been in regular contact since our respective divorces, offering each other support and companionship during this challenging time. One evening, about 2 months after my divorce was finalized, Tom called me. "Hey Gina," he said, his voice warm. "I was thinking. We've both been through hell lately. How about we celebrate our new beginnings? I could bring over a bottle of wine, and we could toast to our freedom." I hesitated for a moment, but then thought, why not? "Sure, Tom. That sounds nice. Come over around 8? When Tom arrived, bottle of expensive red wine in hand, I was struck by how different he looked. Gone was the stressed, angry man I'd seen at the fateful party. He seemed lighter, more relaxed. He'd even gotten a haircut that suited him well. We settled on my patio, the warm summer evening wrapping around us like a comfortable blanket. As we sipped our wine, our conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and moments of shared understanding. "You know," Tom said, refilling our glasses, "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually grateful for what happened. It opened my eyes to so much." I nodded, understanding completely. "I know what you mean. It's like, we're finally free to be ourselves." As the night wore on and the wine bottle emptied, I found myself noticing things about Tom I'd never paid attention to before. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the gentle timbre of his laugh, the strength in his hands as he gestured while talking. I'm not sure who made the first move. One moment we were laughing about some shared memory, and the next, we were kissing. That night, Tom and I crossed a line we'd never even considered before. When morning came, I woke up to find Tom already awake, watching me with a mixture of affection and uncertainty. "Gina," he said softly, "about last night." Last night was unexpected, but it felt right. "Maybe we could date? Take things slow, see where this leads?" I found myself nodding, a smile spreading across my face. "I'd like that, Tom." Over the next few weeks, Tom and I embarked on a new journey together. We went on proper dates, dinners, movies, long walks in the park. To my surprise, Tom revealed a romantic side I'd never seen before. He brought me flowers, left sweet notes for me to find, and always seemed to know just what to say to make me smile. "You know," I said to Tom one evening as we cuddled on my couch, "I never would have predicted this." He chuckled, pressing a kiss to my temple. "Life's full of surprises, isn't it? But I have to say, this is one surprise I'm very grateful for." As I snuggled closer to him, I found myself agreeing wholeheartedly. We weren't looking too far into the future yet, both of us knew the importance of living in the present. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about what that future might hold. I'm Natalie, and at 35, I thought I had my life figured out. As an interior designer, I poured my heart and soul into transforming spaces. My small apartment was my sanctuary, a place where I could retreat from the world and just be myself. Losing my parents early on wasn't easy, but it taught me to be self-reliant. I got used to the quiet evenings, the solitude that comes with being alone. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't some hermit hiding from the world. I had friends, colleagues, and a career I loved. But serious relationships? They weren't on my radar. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, I flopped onto my couch and started scrolling through my social media. It was a mindless habit, one that helped me unwind. That's when I saw the message. "Hey there, Natalie. Your designs are incredible. Have you ever thought about doing commercial spaces?" I paused, my thumb hovering over the screen. The profile picture showed a handsome guy with a warm smile. Jake Thompson, 38, business owner. I hesitated for a moment before replying. "Thanks, Jake. I've done a few commercial projects, but I mostly focus on residential spaces. Why do you ask?" And just like that, we started chatting. At first, it was all business. He owned a small transportation company and was thinking about revamping his office. But as the days went by, our conversations drifted to other topics. Movies, books, our favorite spots in the city. It was easy, effortless. A week into our chats, Jake threw me a curveball. "Natalie, I've really enjoyed talking to you. Would you like to grab coffee sometime?" No pressure, just thought it'd be nice to meet in person. I stared at the message, my heart doing a little flip. Sure, why not? There's a great little cafe near my office. How about Saturday at 2? Saturday rolled around, and I found myself standing in front of my closet, suddenly aware of how much of my wardrobe consisted of work clothes. I settled on a casual sundress, something that said I made an effort, but I'm not trying too hard. The cafe was buzzing when I arrived. I scanned the room, my eyes landing on Jake. He was even more handsome in person, with kind eyes and an easy smile. He stood up when he saw me, waving me over. "Natalie, it's great to finally meet you," he said, his voice warm and genuine. "Likewise," I replied, sliding into the seat across from him. "I hope you haven't been waiting long." And just like that, we fell into conversation. Jake was attentive, asking thoughtful questions about my work. He told me about his transportation company, the challenges of managing a fleet of trucks and drivers. Time flew by, and before I knew it, we'd been talking for hours. As we left the cafe, Jake turned to me. "I had a great time, Natalie. Would you like to do this again sometime?" I found myself nodding before I even realized it. "Yeah, I'd like that." Over the next few weeks, Jake and I started seeing each other regularly. Our coffee dates turned into dinners, and soon we were spending most of our free time together. There was something about Jake that made me feel at ease. He was confident without being arrogant, smart without being condescending. As the months passed, our relationship deepened. Jake introduced me to his mother, Sarah, a kind woman in her 60s who had recently suffered a stroke. She lived with Jake in a modest house on the outskirts of town. "Mom, this is Natalie," Jake said, his arm around my waist. Sarah's face lit up. "Oh, Jake's told me so much about you. Come in, come in." Despite her condition, Sarah was warm and welcoming. We spent the afternoon chatting, and I found myself growing fond of her. It was clear that Jake was devoted to his mother, and seeing this softer side of him made me fall for him even more. As we were leaving, Sarah pulled me aside. "You're good for him, Natalie. I haven't seen Jake this happy in years." Her words stayed with me, warming my heart. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was part of something bigger than myself. Our relationship wasn't without its challenges. Jake's work often kept him busy, and there were times when I felt like I was competing with his company for attention. But he always made time for me, surprising me with lunch dates or leaving sweet notes in my apartment. A year flew by in a whirlwind of love and laughter. On our anniversary, Jake took me to the same cafe where we had our first date. As we finished our meal, he reached across the table and took my hand. "Natalie," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "This past year has been the best of my life. You brought so much joy and love into my world. I can't imagine my life without you." My breath caught in my throat as he got down on one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. "Will you marry me?" Tears welled up in my eyes as I nodded, unable to speak. Jake slipped the ring onto my finger, and the cafe erupted in applause. As we left, hand in hand, I couldn't stop staring at the ring. It was beautiful, but more than that, it represented a future I never thought I'd have. We decided to have a small wedding, just close friends and family. Sarah was overjoyed, insisting on helping with the planning, despite her health issues. The day of the wedding was perfect. As I walked down the aisle, seeing Jake's face light up, I knew I had made the right decision. We exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other through whatever life threw our way. At the reception, Sarah pulled me aside, her eyes glistening with tears. "Welcome to the family, dear," she said, hugging me tightly. After the wedding, Jake and I decided to move into Sarah's house. It made sense, she needed care, and the house was spacious enough for all of us. I rented out my apartment, packing up my life into cardboard boxes, with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The first few months of marriage were blissful. Jake was attentive and loving, always ready with a kiss or a kind word. Sarah and I grew closer, bonding over our shared love of gardening and cooking. It felt like I had gained not just a husband, but a mother as well. Determined to help Sarah recover from her stroke, I hired a massage therapist and a therapeutic gymnastics coach. The improvements were slow, but steady. Within a few months, Sarah was walking normally, even starting to putter around in the garden and cook meals. As for Jake and me, we were in no rush to have children. We both wanted to focus on our careers and enjoy our time together. But as our first wedding anniversary approached, I noticed a subtle shift in Jake's behavior. He started staying late at work more often, citing issues with drivers or last-minute client requests. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, running a business wasn't easy, and I often worked late hours myself. One Saturday morning, as I was enjoying my coffee and a good book, Jake announced he had to go into the office. "On a weekend?" I asked, surprised. He shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "Yeah, some paperwork I need to catch up on. Don't wait up for me, okay?" As he left, I felt a twinge of unease. But I pushed it aside, focusing instead on my plans for the day. It was Sarah who first voiced her concerns. We were in the kitchen, preparing dinner, when she broached the subject. "Natalie, dear," she began, her voice hesitant. "Have you noticed Jake's been working a lot lately? You should keep an eye on him, you know. Don't let him take you for granted." I turned to her, surprised. "What do you mean?" She sighed, looking suddenly older. "Men, sometimes they get restless. They forget what they have at home." Her words sent a chill through me. Was she speaking from experience? I wanted to ask, but something in her expression held me back. That night, as I lay in bed waiting for Jake to come home, Sarah's words echoed in my mind. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider the possibility that something might be wrong. When Jake finally crawled into bed in the early hours of the morning, I pretended to be asleep. He smelled of cigarette smoke and, was that perfume? My stomach churned, but I kept my eyes closed, my breathing steady. The next morning, I made a decision. I couldn't live with this uncertainty, this growing doubt. I needed to know the truth, whatever it might be. With shaking hands, I picked up my phone and searched for private investigators in our area. It felt wrong, a betrayal of trust, but the alternative, living with this gnawing suspicion, seemed worse. I found a highly rated agency and made an appointment for later that week. As I hung up, I felt a mix of relief and dread. Soon, I told myself, I would have answers. Whether I would like those answers was another matter entirely. The detective's office was small and cluttered, with files stacked haphazardly on every surface. The detective himself, a grizzled man in his 50s, introduced himself as Mike. I laid out everything, the late nights, the weekend work, the subtle changes in Jake's behavior. As I spoke, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. It felt good to voice my fears, to have someone listen without judgment. "All right," Mike said when I finished. "Here's what we'll do. We'll track his movements for a few weeks, see if we can establish a pattern. If he's up to something, we'll find out." 3 weeks later, my phone rang. It was Mike. "Mrs. Thompson, I think you should come to my office. I have some information for you." The drive to his office was a blur. My hand shook as I parked, and I had to take a moment to compose myself before going in. Mike was waiting for me, a thick file on his desk. His expression was grim. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson," he began, and my heart sank. "But your suspicions were correct. Your husband has been unfaithful." He pushed the file towards me. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside were photos, text messages, hotel receipts. Evidence of not one affair, but several. Jake had been seeing multiple women, juggling them with what appeared to be a carefully planned schedule. "He's been meeting them at various hotels," Mike explained gently. "Always on different days of the week. It seems he's been doing this for quite some time." I stared at the photos, unable to process what I was seeing. There was Jake, my Jake, with his arm around a blonde woman I'd never seen before. Another showed him kissing a redhead outside a restaurant. My stomach churned. I left Mike's office in a daze, the file clutched to my chest. As I drove home, tears blurred my vision. How could Jake do this to me? To us? What about our vows, our promises? When I pulled into our driveway, I saw that Jake's car wasn't there. Of course not. It was Thursday, according to Mike's report, that was his night with the blonde. Sarah was in the living room when I came in. One look at my face, and she knew. "Oh, Natalie," she said softly. "What happened?" I couldn't hold it in anymore. I collapsed onto the couch next to her and told her everything, my suspicions, hiring the detective, what I'd learned. Sarah reached out, gently taking the file from my hands and setting it aside. Her eyes, filled with a mixture of concern and determination, met mine. "You need to rest, dear. You can't make any decisions in this state. A clear mind is what you need now." I nodded numbly, allowing her to guide me to my feet and towards the stairs. As I climbed each step, I felt as though I was moving through molasses, my body heavy with the burden of my newfound knowledge. "We'll talk more tomorrow," Sarah promised as she saw me to my room. "Try to get some sleep." Sleep, however, proved elusive. I tossed and turned all night, my mind replaying every moment of my marriage, searching for clues I might have missed. When dawn finally broke, I gave up on rest and got ready for work. Work was a blur. I moved through the day on autopilot, my colleagues' concerned glances bouncing off the protective shell I'd built around myself. As the office emptied out for the evening, I remained at my desk, unable to face the thought of going home. It was dark by the time I finally left, the streets quiet as I made my way back to the house. As I turned onto our street, a strange sight greeted me. The garage door was wide open, and I could hear the rumble of an engine. Suddenly, Sarah came tearing out of the garage in Jake's pickup truck, the tires screeching as she swerved onto the street. My heart leapt into my throat as she barreled towards me, but at the last moment, she slammed on the brakes. "Natalie," she shouted, her voice sharp with urgency. "Get in the car. Now." Bewildered and alarmed by the wild look in her eyes, I obeyed without question, scrambling into the passenger seat. No sooner had I closed the door than Sarah floored the accelerator, the truck lurching forward with a roar. In the rearview mirror, I saw Jake burst out of the house, his face contorted with rage. He ran after us, shouting and cursing, but Sarah didn't slow down. We tore down the street, leaving him behind. I turned to Sarah, my heart pounding. "What's going on?" I demanded, but the words died in my throat when I saw her expression. She looked terrified, her knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel. We drove in tense silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only about 30 minutes. I didn't dare speak, afraid of breaking Sarah's concentration as she navigated the darkening roads. Finally, Sarah pulled into the parking lot of a roadside diner. She scanned the area carefully before killing the engine, her body still tense. "Come on," she said, her voice low and urgent. "We need to talk." Inside the diner, we slid into a booth in the far corner. Sarah ordered coffee for both of us, her eyes constantly darting to the door. When the waitress left, Sarah leaned across the table, speaking in a hushed, frantic whisper. "Natalie, listen to me carefully. We're in danger. An hour ago, I overheard Jake on the phone. He was talking about getting rid of us, Natalie. Both of us." I stared at her in shock, my mind reeling from her words. The idea that Jake could be planning to get rid of us seemed too outlandish to be true. Sarah must have sensed my disbelief, because her expression shifted from fear to determination. "You don't believe me," she said, not as a question, but a statement. Without waiting for my response, she reached into her purse and pulled out Jake's phone. "I found this in his car when I was leaving. Look for yourself." Together, Sarah and I huddled over the small screen, scrolling through Jake's messages. My heart sank as we came across a conversation with someone labeled NH Director. As we read, the truth of Sarah's words became clearer. Jake wasn't planning to kill us, but his intentions were far from innocent. He was in talks with the director of a state nursing home, discussing ways to have Sarah declared incapacitated and admitted against her will. "Oh my God," I whispered, quickly searching for reviews of the nursing home. What I found made my blood run cold. Neglect, abuse, unsanitary conditions, the stories were nightmarish. I looked up at Sarah, who seemed relieved. But as I read her some of the worst accounts, Sarah's relief turned to anger. "That's not living," she spat. "It's a slow death. It might as well be murder." But Jake's betrayal didn't end there. As we continued to scroll, we found messages to multiple women, his mistresses. The sheer number was staggering, but what hurt the most were his words about me. "Once Mom's out of the way, I'll leave Natalie," one message read. "I'm tired of playing house. I want my freedom." I felt sick, but forced myself to keep reading, copying the messages to my email as evidence. Sarah and I sat in disgusted silence, the weight of Jake's betrayal hanging heavy between us. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice thick with emotion. "I should have seen this coming," she said. "Jake's father, he cheated on me too. 4 years. He even had another family, 2 kids I didn't know about until it was too late." My jaw dropped. "Sarah, I had no idea." She nodded sadly. I turned a blind eye to it all. I loved him, and I was afraid he'd leave us if I confronted him. I thought, I hoped Jake would be different. That seeing his father's mistakes would make him a better man. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "But he's been this way since he was young. Always charming, always with a new girl on his arm. I lost count of how many hearts he broke. When he married you, Natalie, I thought he'd finally grown up. I was so happy." I took a deep breath. "I'm going to divorce him. I can't stay with someone who would do this to us." Sarah nodded, understanding in her eyes. Then, to my surprise, she began to cry softly. "Please," she whispered, "don't leave me. I can't face this alone." Without hesitation, I moved to her side of the booth, wrapping my arms around her. "I'm not going anywhere, Sarah. We're family, and we'll get through this together. I promise." As Sarah and I sat in the diner booth, emotionally drained from our discoveries, I felt a weight pressing on my chest. There was one more piece of news I needed to share, something that complicated our situation even further. "Sarah," I began, my voice barely above a whisper, "there's something else you should know." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I'm pregnant. I found out just this morning at work. I don't know what to do." Sarah's expression hardened, a fierce determination replacing her initial shock. "I'll tell you what we're going to do," she said, her voice strong and resolute. "We're going to fight back. Jake doesn't get to destroy our lives and walk away unscathed. It's time we took control." We paid for our coffee and headed back to the truck. The drive home was tense, but filled with a sense of purpose. As we pulled into the driveway, I saw Jake's car parked haphazardly, a clear sign of his agitated state. Taking a deep breath, Sarah and I entered the house. Jake was pacing in the living room, his face contorted with rage. As soon as he saw us, he exploded. "Mom, what the hell were you thinking, taking off with my truck? And my phone? Have you lost your mind?" Before Sarah could respond, I stepped forward, my heart pounding, but my resolve firm. I held up the file from the private investigator. "Jake, we need to talk." His eyes darted from me to the file, realization dawning on his face. For a moment, he looked panicked, but then his expression smoothed into one of cool indifference. "So, you know," he said, his voice eerily calm. "What are you going to do about it, Natalie? Divorce me?" "Yes," I said, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. "I want a divorce." To my shock, Jake laughed. "Come on, Natalie. You're overreacting." So I had a few flings. "It doesn't mean anything. You're not enough for me, but we can make this work. You can stay, be a good wife, and I'll be discreet with my extracurricular activities." I felt a surge of anger and disgust. "You must be joking. I don't need a Ravello like you in my life, Jake. We're done." Jake's face darkened. He pointed to the door, his voice low and menacing. "Fine. Get out. This is my house, and I want you gone." Before I could respond, Sarah stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. "Actually, Jake, this is my house. I own it, and I decide who stays and who goes." She took a deep breath. "And I'm telling you to leave. Now." Jake's jaw dropped, disbelief written all over his face. Mom, what are you saying? I'm your son. And Natalie? She's nothing to you. Sarah's grip on my hand tightened. You're wrong, Jake. Natalie is like a daughter to me. She's family. Then, with a pointed look at me, she added, and she's carrying my grandchild. Jake's eyes widened, darting to my stomach. For a moment, hope flickered across his face. You're pregnant? Then I can't leave home. The baby needs a father. I shook my head, my resolve stronger than ever. This child doesn't need a father like you, Jake. We'll be fine without you. Sarah nodded in agreement. You heard her, Jake. It's time for you to go. We'll have the locks changed in the morning. Jake looked from Sarah to me, realization dawning that he had lost this battle. Without another word, he stormed upstairs, presumably to pack his things. As the sound of his angry footsteps faded, I turned to Sarah, overwhelmed by the events of the day. She pulled me into a tight hug, and I felt the tension begin to leave my body. The months following that fateful night were a whirlwind of legal battles, emotional turmoil, and new beginnings. The divorce proceedings were messy, as expected, but with the mountain of evidence we had gathered, Jake didn't stand a chance. I sat in the courtroom, my hand resting protectively over my growing belly, as the judge delivered her verdict. Jake's numerous infidelities, coupled with his attempts to manipulate Sarah's living situation, worked heavily in my favor. The judge's stern voice echoed through the room as she awarded me a substantial compensation package. Mr. Thompson, she said, her eyes boring into Jake, your actions have been reprehensible. This court finds in favor of Mrs. Thompson and orders you to pay compensation for emotional distress. I watched Jake's face contort with anger and disbelief. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness for the man I thought I had married. But as I caught Sarah's supportive gaze from the gallery, I knew we had made the right decision. After the court proceedings, Sarah and I sat in her kitchen, our kitchen now, sipping tea and processing the day's events. I've made some changes to my will, Sarah said suddenly, sliding a document across the table to me. I skimmed the paper, my eyes widening as I realized what I was reading. Sarah, you can't. This is too much. She reached out, clasping my hand in hers. Natalie, you and that baby are my family now. Jake, he made his choices. I've disinherited him. The house, my savings, they're yours and my grandson's now. As my due date approached, Sarah and I spent our evenings preparing the nursery. One night, as we folded tiny onesies and arranged stuffed animals, Sarah turned to me with a serious expression. Natalie, she said, her voice soft but determined, I want you to know that we're going to raise this boy right. He's going to grow up to be a man who respects women, who understands the value of loyalty and honesty. I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. You're right. He won't have his father around, but maybe that's for the best. He won't have to see that negative example. Sarah's eyes misted over. I made mistakes with Jake. I let him see his father's behavior and didn't do enough to counteract it. But this time it'll be different. This little boy will grow up surrounded by strong women who won't tolerate disrespect or infidelity.